Hi, welcome back to another Modus Works Monday. I think today is the third installment of Modus Works Monday. I'm going to try to keep this going. I thought that I would talk about materials today because I use a wide range of materials, and there's a lot of misconceptions about materials that kind of some people they could care less whether they're calling things by the right name or not, but to me, I'm a rule follower type guy, so I always try to keep stuff as straight as I can because I feel like the truth is important and specifics are very important to me. So I'll get you right over the table here where I've got a nice pile of materials that we can go over, and we'll talk about it a bit. So I've got a nice collection of just small samples of materials, all the things that I use. I think I've got pretty much everything. If I don't hit on something and you know that I've missed it, then just let me know in the comments, and I'll try to hit it later. So we'll just start with the standard type materials. So this is copper and brass. The bodies, every body that I've made is made of C110, which is a copper alloy, which is basically pure copper. Super gummy, super beautiful material. It's the only metal that I know of that has this distinct color to it, and of course that's what gives brass and bronze its color, that awesome pink color. So that's a copper rectangle section. I'm going to set them over to the side as I finish, and we'll clear all this off. So, copper round bar. This is actually C145 tellurium copper because C110 is too gummy to turn on my equipment. Some people don't have problems with turning C110, and usually that's with automated equipment, but turning with manual equipment is very hard to get the chips especially when you're parting off the material, to get the chips to come out of the groove. And they'll stick, they'll gall up, and then you can very easily twist an entire part off and completely ruin your workpiece. So that's why I use C145 tellurium copper, because it turns easier. It's still not easy, it's still difficult, but it turns easier than 110. Brass. This is a C360 brass, and it is an alloy of, I forget, it is copper and zinc. That's right. Brass is going to be a copper and zinc alloy. Bronze, which here's bronze. These have been machined down to show you the color, and of course these machinima things are bronze as well. This is what it looks like when it's supplied to me. So it's an extruded process that leaves these features on the outside. So bronze is a copper, and traditionally it was a copper and tin alloy. This is actually a copper and aluminum alloy bronze. It has a fair amount of iron as well, so it makes it slightly magnetic. I've got a N52 magnet right here to prove that to you. And that has to do with the nickel content, I believe, as well as the iron content. So I find that very, very amazing and awesome that a magnet will stick to aluminum bronze. It's very, very cool, very interesting, and something that not a lot of people realize. A regular magnet wouldn't stick to it as strongly, but this is a very, very strong N52 magnet. So. Bronze is one of my favorite materials because it's tough and so hard. So I've got this is a little deburring tool, and I'll show you how hard this bronze is. You can hear it scraping against the material, and it is cutting it, but you can hear it scrape. All right, try that with brass. Cuts like butter, makes an awesome chip, nowhere near the amount of scrape. So bronze, aluminum bronze is very often discounted. A lot of people don't like it because it's got the name aluminum in it, but make no mistake, this is a very tough, very hard material, and it's very, very strong. I don't know the scientific breakdowns on tensile strengths and all that, but just trust me, that is a very awesome and strong material. So move the brass and bronze out of the way. And these are all materials that I, excuse me, that I personally use. There's a brass round bar. These are all materials that I personally use, and there may be materials that I don't necessarily use that other makers might. So moving on, here's another standard material that is a dog in the world that I work in because of this. That's a very good example of why I don't use steel, because the things that I make are uncoated and unsurface treated. This would require a coating or a bluing process to keep it from rusting like this, and even then it would still rust if given the right conditions. So this is a 4140 steel. This is actually the steel that I make my hydraulic press dies out of. And we'll go over forging one day, a whole separate other video. We'll go over forging, and I'll talk about the equipment that I use for that. So, but yeah, that's a regular carbon steel. So you can see how nasty that would be if I made a spinner out of it. Here is the cousin to that material, is stainless steel. This is a 303 stainless. It's a relatively easily machined stainless steel. And if I'm not mistaken, stainless steels usually have a high chromium content, I believe. I may be mistaken on that. I'll have to look it up. But usually have a high chromium content that makes it not rust. This will still rust, but it has to be in a very, very serious situation with like salt water and perfect air temperatures and humidity content and all that. So this is stainless steel SS303 round bar and SS303 rectangle, which I'll be machining my things out of this material, and hopefully this week. Hopefully we'll start on the stainless this week. So look out for that on the Facebook group and on Instagram. So I'll be updating. Let's see, I've got one more standard material here. Well, it's sort of standard. It's a tough to cut material. This is a very special material. It is titanium. So you can tell that it's titanium. Well, you can't tell that it's titanium because you can't feel it, but it's very, very light. Super, super lightweight. Just a relative size. I mean, that's relatively close to the same size. This is actually the almost exact same size. The bronze is going to be, just feeling of it, it's going to be at least twice the weight. Stainless steel, again, twice the weight of titanium. Titanium super, super strong. I use a grade 5 titanium, which is 6Al4V. It is hard to cut. And is not necessarily, you can cut it with regular hand tools. The trick is not overheating it. If you overheat it, it will form a scale or an oxide that is harder than the metal itself. So it can ruin your tools. Like if it's going, your whatever bit it is that you're using is going too fast and it overheats the metal, causes the oxide to form, and then the next flute comes around on the tool, and then it will shear that tooth off, or it will overheat that tool and melt the tool. It's very, very time consuming and more expensive to machine titanium than it is some of the other materials. As opposed to like brass. Brass is 360 brass is the gold standard for machining. It has a machinability rating of 100%. This would have like a relative machining rating of like 30% or 20%. Is incredibly, notoriously difficult to machine and come out with good parts. Even if you are able to cut it without causing those oxides to form, you can cut it and it actually release the internal stresses of the material and end up with warping, and so warping in this direction, or a twist or something like that. So Difficult to work with, but amazing results. So that's titanium. That's a titanium that was going to be a spin thing blank, but as you can see, it was cut a little bit too small, and I wasn't able to clean it up to the correct dimension. So that is basically scrap. Here is a thick piece. This is about 1/4 inch thick. This is used in my forge welding. Here's a piece of 6L4V, and I think that's 80 thousandths or 90 thousandths thick. I use that in my forge welding as well. You can tell they're cut to roughly the same size. And so that would be stacked up and made into a billet to make a composite material like we're going to go over next. And then this is a titanium round bar. I usually get it in at least 12-inch lengths, and I've cut some pieces off of that. So again, incredibly light for the size and extremely strong. They say it's in the 6L4V or grade 5 variant is as strong as steel, from what I understand. So, all right, getting into the exotics now. So I will, let's see, this is superconductor, this is Mokutai and Damascus, and then these are my own forge welded materials. And so we'll do superconductor first. So superconductor is a material that is made for any very, very high current application where they want zero resistance through a piece of wire. So these big pieces, you can see the pattern. These big pieces are just a result of stopping halfway through their production process and cutting off a piece, or having a piece that is extruded through the machine, and they stop for whatever reason, and they're left with pieces that they can't draw down into smaller wires. So this material is the same as this material, just different diameters. And what I mean by that is whenever they build a billet of superconductor, they may start with a billet that is 18 inches, 20 inches, 24 inches in diameter, and they will neck that down. They'll heat it up and put it through an extrusion machine, and they will neck that down. And so it necks down to this size, and then it would neck down to a smaller size, and then neck down to a even smaller size. Each time the billet may be 20 inches by 20 inches long and a huge round piece of material, and by the time they're done with it, they're going to make a wire out of this material. And oftentimes that wire is only 4 thousandths thick. Let me see if I can find a caliper. I don't have a caliper handy. I think it's in my drawer here. But they're going to draw it down to 4 thousandths thick, which here's a little chip. That little chip right there, that's going to be about 10 thousandths thick. That's just like a little piece of, I don't know, titanium, something like that. It's a burr off the edge of a part. That's going to be about 10 thousandths thick. A human hair is usually between 2 and 3 thousandths thick. So that wire, 4 thousandths wire, will have that same cross section and look the same as that at 4 thousandths thick as it does when it's a big, huge billet. So the jacket is copper, and then the little filaments are a titanium and niobium alloy. So I don't know how they put it together to begin. I have some ideas about how they would put it together in the beginning before they extrude it, but I don't know. And that's something that is a closely guarded trade secret. So I have theories on how I would make my own one day if they ever stop making it or something like that. But right now it's still plentiful. It's not cheap, but it is plentiful. I'm able to get superconductor when I need it. So that's superconductor. Any questions about that, just holler at me, and we might could do a follow-up video. And if you have any questions on any of this, let me know. We can do a follow-up video and answer any questions. So let's see. Moving on to, these are forge welded materials that are not my own. Let's see. This is actually a steel. This is a Spyro pattern. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. This is a Spyro pattern from Vegas Forge. and you can see it's like a crisscross, and this is just the end piece of that. That crisscross pattern would show up like, well, it's named Spiro because it's like a spirograph, just crisscross lines in that. And that is a forge welded steel where they use two contrasting alloys of steel to build a pattern into the material. Rick Wayne of Zero-Feud, he's made buttons out of this material. You can Google Spiro Zero-Feud buttons, and that'll pop up on your search, and you can see what it looks like in a finished form. These two materials are both, let's see, this is a Nichols Damascus Zircuti, so it's going to be 2 alloys of titanium plus zirconium. And this is the Nichols Damascus Mokuti, which is 2 different alloys of titanium. So basically this is this plus zirconium. So add zirconium as a third layer to this material. Mokuti and Zircuti are a trade name. It is a brand name for Nichols Damascus pattern welded titaniums, titanium and zirconium. So Mokuti is 2 types of titanium. Zircuti is titanium and zirconium. And then he's also got a dark tie variant, which is just a higher content of zirconium with thicker layers. So again, I can't stress this enough. This is a brand name material, and it is called Mokuti and Zircuti, and is from Nichols Damascus. All right. A competitor to Nichols Damascus is Alpha Knife Supply. This is a black Damascus. There also is a white Damascus variant, which is analogous to a Mokuti. Black Damascus is 1 alloy of titanium, 1 alloy of zirconium. This is a Alpha Knife Supply product. Black Damascus is a brand name for Alpha Knife Supply product. I don't know why it bothers me that much. There's just a lot of other makers of similar materials that call their materials this, and that is just not the case. This is Chad's material, which is Mokuti and Zircuti. This is black Damascus, and there's a white Damascus. So just making that distinction, and you can tell there are distinct differences in the way the pattern looks, because they have certain processes that lend themselves to making the pattern look like that, and different thicknesses of material that give them results that they want and what they want the product to look like. So moving on from those are my materials, which I call it Nix-Mascus, because I don't want my material. My material is unique in that I do more work on mosaic patterns. This is the unicorn horn variant, where you can see it has been layered, then cut, and then relayered, restacked, rewelded, and you end up with a mosaic ingrain. And then this is a super bold pattern that I came up with that is just super thick layers of zirconium and titanium. And so my nomenclature for this material would be a bold, and I would say Ti/Zr, which would be titanium/zirc, Nix-Mascus. And I call it bold just because the pattern is bold, thick layers. And then this is unicorn horn because somebody said, hey, those look sort of like unicorn horns opposing one another. It's sort of hard to see there. But you can look at the old last week's video, and you can see the pattern on a little disc that I had cut off and flamed. So, and that has titanium, zirconium, and then so 2 alloys of titanium and zirconium. So I'll go Ti/Ti/Zr, unicorn horn Nix-Mascus. Apologize. And then these are different plates that are in various stages of completion. So this is what the billet would look like before I welded it back together to make something like the unicorn horn. So you can cut and restack. All this is very universal, goes along with traditional pattern welding of steel. You can look up Damascus steel online. You can look at Alex Steele's channel. Channel on YouTube. He makes a ton of Damascus steel, whereas this is a Damascus titanium. He makes a Damascus steel, which the principles are basically the same. There are just some details that have to be done a little bit differently, and I'm not going to reveal any sort of process, because it is it's not necessarily super secret information, but it is something that, if you're willing to put the work into, you might could do something like this yourself. But nobody's going to give you the answers. You have to come up with the processes to be able to pull this off. Again, this is basically the same as this, but the pattern has been manipulated to the point where you get these squiggles. That would make a very nice knife scale, and that was the intention behind this material. It's a little thin, but that's okay. So, examples of Nix Mascus. So my brand name is Nix Mascus. Chad Nichols' brand name is Mokutai and Zerkitai. Alpha Knife Supply is Timascus, either white or black Timascus. Tungsten, not a whole lot to say about tungsten other than it's really tough on your tools and super heavy. So you can see how that shook the workbench when I dropped it. It is, so where titanium, stainless steel is twice heavier than titanium roughly, stainless steel to tungsten is going to be twice heavier than stainless steel. So it's quite surprising when you pick up your first bar of tungsten. It's super heavy. If you don't have a tungsten spinner, I highly recommend one. Hopefully we'll get tungsten in the works on the machinima thing soon, or maybe the spinima thing. We'll see. But yeah, an amazing material, amazingly tough material. Super heavy. It's the same, not exactly the same, but roughly the same density as gold. So if you had a bar of gold this weight, or this size, that's roughly how much a bar of gold that size would weigh. So it gives you a good feel for, you see these huge bars on TV of people tossing around of gold, and you realize quickly that that's not that's not real. It's not real gold, obviously. So, what else? I think we went over everything. Let me run and grab I did forget Damasteel. I have some important notes on Damasteel as well. So, give me just a second. I'll be right back. Found a few things. Let me move all this out of the way so I can go over the same thing again. So, Damasteel is a brand name Damasteel it's a company called Damasteel, and they're in Sweden. They make unique pattern, very unique pattern. This is the blue tongue pattern that everyone knows and loves. Damascus style steel. So Damascus is a process of making patterned steel. They have a patented process, a very super secret process by which they make these interesting patterns. Because you cannot make these circle patterns by cutting and stacking and rewelding by traditional Damascus making techniques. This is the same pattern. You just can't see it. So that's for the run of spinning things I made. Each little circle. I mean, I have my own ideas about how they make it, similar to like the superconductor. But I mean, I don't have time to devote to making my own or trying to make my own. It's very expensive to try to develop something like that. But very, very unique, very, very special material that only they make. And it's a company called Damasteel. And so a lot of people call any sort of Damascus steel Damasteel. And that is incorrect as well. So just as much as this is a Damascus steel, it technically is. Also, this Rietveld, this is a Bertie Rietveld dragon skin Damascus. So similar types of material, similar techniques, but ultimately unknown. Like, people don't know how this is made. It's very touchy and very very specific knowledge that goes into making stuff like this. But I really hate, or I dislike the conflating of the terms when they say every type of Damascus is Damasteel. That's just incorrect. Damasteel is a brand name. So again, that's a blue tongue Damasteel. Moving to the Rietveld Damascus, this is called dragon skin, and it's a very specific process that it's fairly well known how this is made. It's using usually types of ball bearings that are forge welded together using a powdered steel. It's no secret, but he's the only guy that makes and produces it for sale as a material. A lot of people make it themselves and build knives out of it, but that's a very awesome material and colors beautifully, and it's just amazing. And I'm glad that I was able to score that piece, make special pieces out of it. This is, can't tell what that is. Yeah, you can. That's another blue tongue Damasteel. And then this is a excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. This is a reptilian pattern from Vegas Forge, Damascus steel. And this is cutting and stacking is the process that goes behind that. So the important note that I had to make about Damasteel in particular, Damasteel the brand name, was these are two different variants of Damasteel. You've got a austenitic variant and you've got a martensitic variant. Martensitic variant is going to be very easy to rust. You can see there are little pieces of rust all over up and down this rod. And then the austenitic type is basically rust free. It's an alloy of 304 and 316 steels. So it's going to be similar to your 303 in that it doesn't rust. So it's very difficult to rust. Whereas this is made of I think it's ABL and no. I forget. I know it's RWL 34 is one of the steels, and they're hardenable carbon steels, similar to like this 4140. I mean, that's a very wide umbrella to throw those under, but this is a rustable, hardenable carbon steel, and so is this. It's a rusting, hardenable carbon steel, useful for knife making. And then the austenitic type is good for special ornamental pieces that you want to capture this pattern into an ornamental piece. Something that doesn't require hardening, doesn't require an edge. So that's important distinction when you go to start making stuff. When I first started making spinner buttons, I made it out of the martensitic variant, and some people had some rusting issues. And it really depended on their climate and where they lived. But I did harden them so that they had a lower chance of rusting when the material is hardened. So, all right. I wish that pattern was exposed. Let me grab something right quick, and I'll show you what it looks like. So when this material is etched and hardened and everything, or no, etched and polished and everything, it's going to look like that. So it's got that same pattern. This is a mini thing. So, yeah. All right. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that tour of the materials. And again, if you have any questions or you see that I missed something, because I'm just kind of going off the cuff here, If you have any questions or see that I missed anything, just let me know in the comments, and I'll be glad to bring it up in a later video. So I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time on another Motorsports Monday. Have a good day.